So, I want to start with the amount of animation and the different types. This is such an endeavor. I mean, I've known the way your rotoscoping is done in the past, but you're pulling out all stops and everything you can kind of think of for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I set out with a lot of goals for what I wanted this film to do, but one of those goals, and a very important one, was, we make independent films, so I wanted to offer the world something they'd never seen before. I want someone to come into this film and love it, but if they don't love it, if they come into my film and hate it, I want them to leave and say, that's something brand new I never even knew I hated until I came to the screening. I want to give you something you haven't seen, regardless of where you land on the film. And part of that was actually, the story and what we chose to tell. But another big part of it was how. And so rather than even reinventing the wheel once to make this film, I feel like we reinvented the wheel at least a half dozen times, maybe a dozen times to make this. So we, used oil paintings and acrylics and paper cutouts and stop motion and digital rotoscoping and traditional paper rotoscoping and live action and digital collage, image processing, bed knobs and broomsticks looking live action on, animated backgrounds, you name it. We tried it in this.
The other part of it that I'd love you to touch upon with that story is, and maybe this is why Lily came on board, the perspective we get is so important. It's not something we've seen in Westerns particularly. Can you talk a bit about that and how important that is?
It's very important. This movie, I studied physics and was doing that before I did film. So this movie is very much about, I won't say more accurate because who knows, but a more scientific, more according to the real theories of multi-worlds theory. This film is much closer to that than, say, a Spider-Man or even an Everything Everywhere All at Once, which are great, but they just let you have a bunch of versions of the same character, and it is what it is, and it's cool, and it opens up these great fun adventures, maybe more fun than mine. I don't know, but. So we did want to stick with something that was more akin to the original theories that Hugh Everett and Wheeler had on multi-worlds theory. And for me, that was also how those theories can be used to explain our individual experiences and how competing experiences and competing memories in our own life essentially extinguish one another until something is history. So there's this strange way in which the collective experience is defined by a bunch of people who can't fully experience each other's experience. And I wanted to use something sort of iconic, in this case, the West, which the reality of the West has long since been supplanted by John Wayne, by The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, by Garth Brooks, by whatever people build their image of the West off of. But, as much as I love The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it's, a guy from California flies to Spain, pretends to be a cowboy, and that's an Italian dude, makes some music, and now we're like, that's what the West looked like. And it's not. It's a strange, what I like to call the colonization of knowledge, where you land on this is the right version, this is what it was. And the truth of the West that I grew up in, and I think the truth of the West that everyone who existed here, was far more of a strange melting pot of many different perspectives and many conflicting ideas that are both at the same time correct. And most of all, there has always been a native presence in the American West since long before there were Europeans that came here. And they didn't magically go away. They didn't magically stop having an influence. There wasn't a lone cowboy walking out and organizing everything into the New World Order. That's just not the reality. So also wanted to write something that the best we can sort of do is this post-colonial or decolonized version of a Western, which I think is very different than other Westerns. And at the heart of that, I wrote a role for Lily Gladstone because I think her perspective on this is excellent, is interesting, is something people need to hear. Also, I think she's one of the best actors in the business. So it was by far a win-win to try to get her to do the role. And I think, her getting to be this character that drifts between the Han Solo of the movie and the Obi-Wan Kenobi in the movie and the Lily Gladstone of the movie, frankly, her own stamp of originality she put on it was really important. But it was also important to create characters like Kiowa's character, Frank. It was important that he as an actor was a native actor, but that's not even addressed in the film. I think because someone's a native actor, it doesn't just mean they have to tell a story that's about this is what the native experience is. It's great when that also informs their performance, but we wanted to make a film where they also, as they are in reality, are another human being going through this world, and that's their story. And their own history influences that, but it doesn't have to define everything about that performance. So Frank is very much that. Lily has a little bit more of native, actual on-screen story that's added to hers. Gary Farmer, much like Kaya was, certainly that character is a native character in the film, but it's not. It's not called out in there at all. They also are. Just the people that make up this universe. That was a long answer to your question, but hopefully it made sense.
No, it definitely did, and I love it. I love that you address it because, like you said, it's so many people misconstrued the history of the reality of it. But one thing I want to touch upon, your locations, and specifically Arizona has been very important throughout your career. Can you talk a bit about that location, but also what Arizona means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a line that Alex Cox has in the movie, and he says, it's a long line, it's a whole monologue, but it ends with, "And the landscape records it all." And you just sort of see the deserts of Arizona. And that line is in there because, this is a time travel, Western, science, whatever it is movie. But I remember being in Paris, and I truly think that there is a bigger difference in what it feels like to be a human being sitting in Paris, France in 2022 and being a human being sitting in Tucson, Arizona in 22. That difference in feeling and what the experience is like is as different as being a human being sitting in Tucson, Arizona in 1873 or Tucson, Arizona in 1973. So the idea that we move around in time, hopefully someone gets out of my film and they feel the somewhat irrelevance of time, that time is really not that much different than moving in location, and moving yourself around different places is as big an experiential change as moving around through time. And so I really do feel that. I feel like I am who I am because I've lived in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and Colorado for most of my life. And even when I went and lived in Europe, it was in southern Portugal, which is in some strange ways similar to those places. But that's formed me that is where you choose to put yourself. Influences how you think. It influences how you feel. It frankly influences the temperature, influences the people. So I wanted viewers to feel what it's like to be in Arizona as best I could, because that's the experience I know. And if someone really wants to give you that, I think it should be someone from those places, can talk about it, can present it. And it was a big, important part of it. So, we shot 16mm plates of the desert because I wanted people to see and feel that and recreated that world. And it's who I am. And hopefully watching this film's a little bit like hanging out with who I am.
I love that you use the word feel. Yeah. I think when watching your films, even though the animation may take you out of the reality, I feel like the dust, the smoke, I almost feel like you can almost smell what they're having in the background. It's such a way of, you show so many different feelings, and it's not just eyesight that's important, it's all the senses. Can you talk about the importance of making movies that are sensory based? It's not like a scratch and sniff, but damn it, you're pretty close there.
Yeah, thank you. It's a huge compliment. So one, thank you. Because that is what I want people to feel. I want this movie to be as much an experience as it is a story. I think all of my films, when I made Mars, I wanted people to feel like they were in a comic book. And for good or bad, I think they did. When I produced Yacona, it has no dialogue, and it's a documentary because we wanted people to feel like what it was like to be in the San Marcos River. And certainly, even the short I made with Tom Skerritt, The Phantom 52, I wanted people to feel that lonely truck ride throughout the West. And when we made this, I wanted the different animation styles to feel like you were experiencing these same events from many different perspectives, but still you were feeling those experiences. And there are certain certain things that bleed through each of them that are the same, whether you're moving in and out of the paper cutouts into the rotoscoping, that you feel the heat, that you smell that place, that the sound of the horse leather when people are riding, that there's a great shot I love where Kaya was wiping his brow and the sun's beating down and we zoom into an extreme close-up of the surface of the sun. I wanted people to feel that way, that the heat just keeps burning you even when you're ready for it to stop. That was the idea. And I think we tried to keep in the animation styles hitting on indelible moments that would help that sort of transcend not just seeing a photograph of these things, but even when you see a drawing of it, even when you are cued. I should give a shout out to Eric Friend, who did the sound design, that the sounds help build that as well, that you would hear the things that you associate with these feelings. And by the end, I didn't really want to tell anyone anything about time travel or about, the quantum physics ideas of multiple universes extinguishing each other, or even what Schrodinger's cat experiment really means. I wanted them to feel it. I hope by the end I didn't say time's kind of irrelevant, but someone gets to the end of the movie and goes, I'm starting to realize the order of events doesn't really matter, because I just felt that for 96 minutes. That was my hope. We've mentioned a couple of members of the cast. I want to break this down because this is one of the most eclectic and deep casts I've seen in a film. Let's talk about kind of the more veteran actors. Alex, the great Mr. Farmer. I love his goggles or whatever the hell he's wearing.
Yes.
And then I'll let you talk about, you have a tribute at the end. Please talk about how important she is to not just your film, but film and art in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's no mistake her character. Anna Karina was, this is her final appearance in a film. And, her character is titled, her character's name is Inspiration, but she also is an inspiration. For me, the entire cast I was able to work with was maybe the greatest gift of this film, because I got to honestly gather up the lion's share of my cinematic heroes and put them on screen in my own film, and then got to grab a few musical heroes and throw them in there as well. And most people never get that opportunity, so it's pretty amazing I got to do that at all. And in the case of Anna, she knew my co-writer Hal, and they were friends, and we actually, the character of excuse me, I've been talking loud over music for the last 10 days, I think, but the original character of Inspiration was written for that whole character that Patrick Page ends up picking up in Memory, and we wrote it specifically for her. We planned on shooting that in November of 2019, and she wasn't feeling well, and asked if we could postpone it till early in the new year, and we would come back and finish it, and of course her not feeling well turned out to be cancer, and she passed away at Christmas, and we weren't able to finish filming with her, which was very sad. And I even tried to figure out a way we could restructure the movie so that character wouldn't be in the movie, because it was really written for her, and we felt like it should just retire with her. But if you watch the movie, you'll realize it's integral to have that character, and this, if we ever get to make them, it'll be amazing, but this is the first of a trilogy, and that character plays a big role. So rather than recast her, I did a rewrite and split it into two characters, and was able to bring Patrick Page in to finish it out. But we kept her as Inspiration, and it was very important for us. And going to show this film in Paris, Laurent, her longtime manager, came, and both Hal and I were there, and we said, if they don't like it, we'll recut the movie and pull Anna out. We want to make sure that we've done an honor with her final appearance. It was important to us, and I was very happy that he kissed me on the cheek and he was crying. He said, "Thank you for this, final tribute." And we were able to do what we wanted to do, which was make sure that her, last effort was captured and still there on the screen. So that, obviously, she's an icon of cinema. I say she's a cinematic hero to me. There's a lot of people she's a cinematic hero to, and I'm really glad we were able to include her. But similarly, as a 15-year-old kid in Dallas, watching Alex Cox movies, watching Repo Man, watching Straight to Hell is a big part of why I make films. So having Alex Cox get to appear in this film, amazing for me. Gary Farmer is just, a force of nature, and Pow Wow Highway and Dead Man and these films he made just as much as Alex Cox. His performance has made me think you could do something totally different with cinema that I just had never seen. And, he brought that magic to my set, and I'm like, this is incredible. Lily Gladstone, I first saw her in the Smith Brothers film, and she blew me away. And I was talking to her, I think, at the Paramount or maybe the State Theater in Austin one year. I think Alex had introduced us, and talked to her for 30 minutes, thought this human being in front of me is really great. Before I even realized, it was half an hour before I realized, oh, this is also the actor I just saw in the film. In the performance I loved, and it's a testament to the fact she totally becomes these characters and is amazing. And I got to put her in the film, which was incredible. David Arquette was someone who I didn't have quite as long and deep of a connection to, but I love his performances, and he has such a I mean, it's funny because he's known for all these goofy performances, but there's a real authenticity to David as a performer, which if you ever get to see You Cannot Kill David Arquette, you'll see that. And I had not seen that before we cast him. I mean, he finished that like 2 weeks before he came to our set. So he did our movie coming right out of the events of You Cannot Kill David Arquette, and he just threw himself so wholeheartedly into the project. And now he's a new cinematic hero of mine. I mean, I would work with David any day of the week, anytime. He was so good. And Kiowa similarly, he's this physical actor that I'm so glad is blowing up on Dark Winds, because he should. So it was really for me so gratifying to pull all these people together. Patrick Page coming from Broadway, it's like, well, that's like a real actor, and then music, co-writing this with Hal Gelb was so important. So the fact that we were able to get Nico Case to trust us with a performance and come onto screen and sing and also act, and John Doe, I mean, again, 15-year-old Jeff, you're going to direct Alex Cox and John Doe and Gary Farmer in the same movie. It's like, yeah, we're going to throw in Anna Karina. Whoa. It was pretty great. And even some of the younger musicians, the guys in Zeke's, some of the, Hal's other people in Tucson helping us out with building that crazy soundscape, and Hal himself, obviously, was incredible. It was incredible.
I especially love David and Frank's combo together. They play off each other so well. I'm hoping in the trilogy we get so much more of what those guys get into.
I hope we get the trilogy, and if we do, your wish is definitely coming true. Frank is one of my best friends. I used to live in my house and known Frank for a very long time, and that's not why I cast him. Frank is such a good. For any of you who don't know Frank Mosley that are listening to this, check out everything he's done. I mean, he's also a director and a writer. He does that too, but as an actor, he's amazing. He holds his own with all of these wonderful casts that I was able to pull together, and he and David had such a charisma with each other, which is good because the second film in this sequel, which is just a treatment, the script's not fully written, but the treatment follows the two characters of Colfax and Depew, which are the characters that David and Frank play, and it follows how they got into this world and how they went from good guys to I don't think there are bad guys in the world. I don't know. There's a couple I don't like, but in my movies there aren't really so much bad guys. There are people that have gotten themselves into a place that they're a thorn in everyone else's side. But we get to see how David and Frank become that thorn.
Even if they are bad guys, they're lovable bad guys.
They're lovable. They're bad guys you really like to see show up on screen.
So you really were kind enough to share with us what happened in Paris and that approval. I'd love to know how Austin looked at this film. It is very much, I think when people think of you, Geoff, they think of Austin.
Yeah.
Obviously, with your teaching, it's a whole nother Zen-like level. But I'm curious, what was the experience of Fantastic Fest, Austin's viewing of it? I know that must have been really special, especially all the people you brought in. It's pretty kick-ass.
It was amazing. I was born in Fort Worth. I grew up in Dallas, but still in my life, the place I lived the longest, and if I really claim somewhere as home, it's Austin. That's where I started my career. That's where I lived the longest. That's where I built a house. That's where I put down roots. So to get to come back to your hometown with your film is always a wonderful experience. And to play it at the Austin Film Society Theater, again, another one of those cinematic heroes who's not in my film, but Richard Linklater, and seeing Slacker as a teenager at the Inwood Theater in Dallas, that also helped make me want to create films. And he started Austin Film Society. That has been an important part of my cinematic journey, and so getting to play it in there was amazing. And the theater itself is also fantastic. It sounds great. It looks great. And Fantastic Fest is already a festival full of weird films, and within a festival full of weird films, it's my hubris talking for just a minute, but we're we were the most outside of the box film at a festival full of weird films, for good or bad. I think sometimes the conventional audience there that wants a horror film is like, this movie's no good. What is this? It's not even scary, which is true. My movie's not scary. But, we were already the weird film in the Weird Film Festival. So what could be better than that, in a way? I love, I think it was Richard Whitaker over in the Chronicle had us on the 5 most bizarro films in Fantastic Fest. And that's a huge compliment. I think that's what we wanted to create, is something no one else had ever seen. And I think going to Fantastic Fest and going back to Austin, playing there, having David, Nico, Jesse, Kiowa, Lily, Matt, who helped edit it, Frank, Trieste, myself, Hal, the producers, Bill and Melody, all in there. Eric Friend, who did sound, the guys from Minnow Mountain who animated. I'm sure I'm missing people. There's photos of me on stage, and it looks like I'm an angry coach throwing people out of the game, but I'm really just pointing at all the people in the audience involved in the film. Everyone was there, and it was like a family reunion, and 8 of them were staying in my house. We're all packed in there and staying up late, and out of Minnick too. I'm keep giving shout outs to everyone. It's hard to remember my brain on the spot, but how many people came out and supported the film. And then the audience loved it, and I'm sure there's a little bit of home turf advantage. I'm in a town where I have a lot of people that are close to me, but it was really nice to play that packed theater and have so many people come up to us afterwards and talk about what they did see in the film and what they liked. And it was a great way for the cast members who had not yet seen it to experience it. It was a great experience for me. So yeah, I'll always cherish that Saturday afternoon in Austin. It was pretty amazing.
I definitely think of all the photos I've seen in Fantastic Fest, y'all had by far the biggest team.
Yeah.
Triple the number. It was awesome.
I think we were the biggest footprint of anyone.
Easily, yeah. I'd love to know, Geoff, you've known a lot of different film festivals. What made you submit to Tallgrass? Why Tallgrass?
I like burning bridges these days. The big film festivals are fine. I've played in some capacity, whether it's a director at Sundance and South by, or an actor at Berlin. I think Tribeca's never given me the time of day, but all the rest of them, I think I've played. These major festivals, and some been a producer and animator at TIFF. They're great. They do serve a purpose. They're not that much about discovering new voices, in my opinion. There are so many hurdles to get in to those festivals. There are so many challenges to even get a programmer at those festivals who can make a decision to help your career, even to see it. There are so many ties those festivals already have to everything from distributors to producers to 20-year relationships with other filmmakers. That's the nature of the business, so hopefully I'm not burning a bridge with any of them too bad if this comes out and they watch it. But festivals like Tallgrass, like Sidewalk, Cucaloris, these festivals that occupy movie makers, whatever, they keep changing the name, but 50 film festivals worth the admission and things. These are festivals run far more by volunteers, and these are festivals that don't carry the same career clout necessarily that the biggest players do. But I think there's something really great about that. That means these film festivals are about really championing these voices that aren't getting heard, these voices that don't have a famous producer attached. And it's not to say things aren't coming out of the Sundances of the world that aren't exciting. There's some amazing films. I love watching these films that come out of there. And there are some voices that get amplified, but the sheer nature of getting in there, there's a certain amount of privilege just to the fact that you're sitting in those rooms. And if you didn't have, you don't get to those rooms. That's not true here. I have students that I taught in school a year ago. There were at least one that's playing a film here this week. Congratulations, Sophia.
We talked to her in a couple of hours.
Oh, good. Well, tell her hi for me. If I don't find her before I saw Sophia, I saw your star on the ground when I was walking over here, and I was very proud. But this festival, and several others like it, people like Melanie are working so hard to bring crazy movies to the screen and to audiences that might never see them, that aren't going to fly out to Sundance or South by. And that, deep down, is why I do this. That's deep down where I came from. Those, as a kid, I a Brooklyn elitist going to see these fancy movies. I was a kid in Texas who was lucky if something made it to our town, and festivals like this do that. So it's a very long answer to really a short question, but I applied to Tallgrass. That I came to Tallgrass. I mean, I'm here right now because the people putting this on genuinely really, really care about exposing people to films they might not otherwise see, and they genuinely care about going through all those blind submissions and finding the stuff that really they haven't seen before, that's brand new, that's interesting, has potential, that doesn't have to be polished out. It doesn't have to be a film that might win the Academy Award later this year. It can be a film full of all the bumps and bruises, even sometimes an interesting failure. That's what I want to see on the screen. I want events that still champion that as much as they can. And I know, we could go through the long discussion of when you get to be the larger festivals, there are financial concerns, there are distribution concerns, there are things that mean that's not always possible. But that also means that I don't just want to be at those events. I want to be at these events, and sometimes my heart wants to be at these even more. So thanks for having me at Tallgrass.
I love that. Thank you. I'd love to, you've already mentioned the trilogy and you're working on the treatment. Put that aside. I know you always have ideas popping into your head, and you're always talking to Hal, so who knows what crazy crap he's coming up with. I'm curious, though, what can we anticipate down the line? Have you got anything else? I mean, you popped out with Jane Got a Gun. I had no idea that was going to come out of left field, and I love that.
Yeah.
What's next, Geoff?
I mean, I have a lot of stuff. The sad part of this is just trying to be an indie filmmaker, and the financial reality of even being able to do this has always been hard and getting harder. Again, the odds of getting distribution, if you're not actually going to the majors with distribution already attached, which you might have seen the catch-22 here. You can't get distribution if you don't already have a distribution attached to your team. Is getting harder and harder, and it's bad. I mean, I hope the powers that be consider the fact that the indie film market for anyone who's really genuinely indie is a nightmare right now, that you're faced with no options to try to recoup your money so then you don't get to make another film. That's the reality of where most indie filmmakers are, and that's a bummer, and I hope it's been getting worse ever since DVDs and VHS tapes went away. That was at least a way to monetize and put your film in these mom and pop stores around the country, and that's gone. So it's a very different market than even 2010, certainly a different market than 2000. But so I don't know. I mean, that's the first thing, is I really don't know. I've got a lot of ideas, but trying to actually get these ideas off the ground in any feasible way is very, very difficult. So, I mean, Hal and I really have talked about the sequels, and like I said, if we can't find a way for this movie to, recoup, I don't think there's a way to make the sequels, sadly, even though cast is signed on board, we're there, everyone's very excited. We have to figure out, financially, is it even possible to make a sequel to this? So it's possible that Hal and I are going to go down to Tucson and just record a rock opera, and that's going to be the sequel to this, or make a comic book. I mean, that might be the answer. That's how someone's going to see these. From the other film things, it is so hard to get a feature done without, being connected. I don't have an agent. I don't have a manager. I don't have anyone doing that for me. So I might be making a stop motion animation about Yiddish folk tales with Lauren Motory. We've been toying with that because we can just do it on our own at home. But I also have some other crazy stories and ideas that we wrote. Also with Lauren, I co-wrote a really great, super cheap alien invasion horror movie set in the New Mexico, Arizona desert in the 1980s with a punk rock band. That would be great. I'd love to make it. I hope I get to make that. But again, it's finding how is that going to be feasible. So there's some for anyone. You're the first one who's gotten any of those. No one's really asked what's next, so that's good. You're the first one.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, because I do think indie filmmakers know about it. Everyone else needs to know how difficult it is, because you're right. There is no straight to DVD. There is no straight to anything. I mean, even streaming, you have to have representation to even get in a meeting in New York. So it sucks.
It does. I mean, art is always hard, and there's a lot of people who are like, well, great artists aren't recognized until later, and all that is true, but I think the side that people look at this and they'll see my film playing 25 festivals and like, you made it, that's just 25 opportunities for me to lose a little bit more money. There's no recoupment when you go play festivals. You're still spending money and traveling and, using up your vacation days and doing your day job remotely from wherever. It's super hard to get a return on at all. It's super hard to get more than a zero return on an indie film right now, much less your budget, much less a profit. But if you come to these festivals, like here at Tallgrass, again, I'm walking around a party last night and there's, 50 people in my same position who do this because they love it. And they, you do this because you can go into a theater and have an audience member come up to you afterwards and tell you something that they understood or spoke to them personally. That has to be worth it. And it is. So, I don't want to make it sound all doom and gloom and sad, but unlike writing a book or making a record that will just sit on the shelves and give you a chance for maybe in 50 years people recognize you as an artist and come back, film is so expensive and film is so inaccessible in this sense right now. That's why I lament the loss of DVDs and such, that if a streamer doesn't pick you up and keep you in rotation, your movie ceases to exist, so you don't even have the long tail of a cult film. My favorite films, these filmmakers I started this interview by saying I loved, they're cult films. Cult films existed because those VHS tapes and DVDs sat around and were still available. Right now, as soon as Netflix doesn't put your film on, your film ceases to exist, and there isn't even that chance for you to do an Office Space and do badly in the theaters and come back around and be super successful on the home video, because your film, if it's not anointed a spot in the major streamers, it just goes away basically. And that's terrible. So I don't know. Again, we need to shake Gen Z, get behind me here. Come on, let's start shaking some doors and telling people to open them up and keep these films around. Keep the small films. Keep the films that bombed initially in rotation somewhere, because as we've seen with all kinds of great art, the most successful thing out of the gate isn't always the best thing. There's a lot of stuff that grows on you and needs 3 viewings to watch. And David Lynch wouldn't have a career if it had to be a blockbuster in day one. And so many people, I read people's statements when they apply for film school, and David Lynch is always there as like my inspiration. And those films need time, need multiple viewings. They needed that chance to sit around and grow. And I think the films that I personally want to see need that. So I hope to see more of that happen.
So lastly, I'd love to kind of just throw out a fun question. I'm always curious, what are you reading? What are you watching?
A lot of Dateline. I love Keith Morrison. It's sad, but sometimes that's the answer, yes. Coming out of COVID in a strange way the world shut down and working my movie until 4 in the morning. I did work on this movie till 4 in the morning every night. This is not hyperbole. Like every night, 7 days a week, for years, I worked on this movie, doing some amount of tweaking and animation every frame until, the sun came up, then napped for 2 hours and taught my classes. So sometimes really I do just want to turn on, I'm going to watch like an episode of Dateline or something where I can mostly check out and let your brain follow a story for 30 minutes. But having said that, what else am I watching for inspiration and for real excitement? Reading, the most recent thing I'm diving back and reading John Darnell, The Mountain Goats book.
Wow, yeah.
So because I also like music, and it's cool to see his turn at a novelist. I need to and haven't started. I'm about to read those Yiddish folk tales that Lauren's giving me. So maybe those are 2 books right now on the queue. And then from watching things, it's the nature of this job and being on the circuit. Probably most of what I'm watching is independent films on the circuit. So stuff that's not necessarily available, as at Sidewalk. And I loved Our Father the Devil, Ellie's film. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
Yeah.
Super good. Give a shout to that. Skinner Myers, if you haven't seen The Sleeping Negro, saw that. It's amazing. It was a couple years ago, premiered at Slam Dance. It is somewhat available. I just helped produce his new feature, which is still not, it's a work in progress, and it's not done. We've shot, but saying cool and amazing things, these films that maybe aren't getting out to as big an audience. Those are those are absolutely what I've been watching as of late. Super excited for Killers of the Flower Moon. There's a big one, but I haven't seen it, but I'm looking forward to it. But also, again, you watch your friends' things. If you haven't seen Dark Winds, because I don't have AMC, excuse me, I had a little coffee burp there. I don't have AMC, so I had to wait a while to watch it, but it's with Kai Owens, Zahn McLaren. It's based on those Tony Hillerman books. It's awesome. Watching that right now and binging it, and Cobra Kai. If also there's some good for things. If people want more popular things, I'm watching. I have a rock band. We wear prosthetic arms, so we're in the crane kick position at all times. And we wrote like 20 songs about the Karate Kids way before this new resurgence. One of those songs was even called Cobra Kai. So obviously I was the right audience for the Cobra Kai reboot, but I love it. So that's what I'm watching.
Geoff, it's always a pleasure, but thank you for driving through the night to get here and making this possible, because it is important to have filmmakers like you, for other independent filmmakers to notice and know you can be successful for decades at doing this. But I do agree with you. I do hope maybe there is some change or shift, because if you can't make your films, who else can?
Exactly. I mean, it probably shows my interview. I like working class arts. That's what I've always liked. That's what I like to consume. That's what I like to make. And it's a very fragile part of the arts ecosystem. The working class artist is very easy to stop. The world can stop them from making any more art. And I know a lot of great filmmakers who haven't made any more films since I saw their feature and loved it, but it was so hard and it took so much out, and it didn't, though those films were successful in the sense that people liked them and gave them good reviews, they weren't successful in the sense they didn't open up the door for those filmmakers to make another film. And that breaks my heart every time it occurs. I'm just crazy, abuse myself physically to keep making films, so I've kept making them. But I absolutely understand the people that just throw in the towel. It's not because they're lazy or they didn't have it in them or they didn't have another story they wanted to tell. It's because it's really hard and it's a really fragile part of the ecosystem. So all of you that are watching it, I mean, the fact you're watching this interview, you probably are the very people that are supporting us. So, thank you. I mean, you interviewing, I mean, this is important. If a film falls in the forest and nobody gives us any press coverage, like it didn't happen, So this is all it. This is how we managed to keep doing it. So also I want to just say thank you for taking the time to be here at Tallgrass, interview me and interview these other filmmakers, because this is how we might have a chance to remind people we exist and remind people to spend a little bit of money on these films and, watch the big ones too, but everything doesn't have to be Endgame. Some stuff can be Endgame, meaning the Marvel movie. I guess everything's a version of an Endgame. But I mean, watch the little films too. And when you watch the indie films, know that there is also a whole world beyond A24. A24 is great, but it's also like a little studio. Like there are things that are far more independent than that. Scratch the surface deep and watch some of these films.